It's been 6 weeks since Labour took government while pledging to end the small boats crisis. But tonight, I can exclusively reveal that after another bumper load of small boat channel crossings today, more than 5,500 illegal migrants have now arrived in Britain since Keir Starmer's government swept to power on July the 4th. At least 9 small boats made the perilous journey across the channel today, containing 450 undocumented migrants from the continent and beyond. The grim total for the year so far is 19,000. Let's be clear, we've no idea who these people are, where they came from, or what their intentions are while in Britain. So Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, promised to smash the gangs by setting up a border command unit. He scrapped the Rwanda plan. He's allowed 100,000 illegal migrants to apply for asylum. And his deputy, Angela Rayner, has warned Brits that every borough in the UK must take their, quote, fair share of illegal migrants in their communities. This is a national emergency. The safety of our nation is at risk, and failure to get a grip of this crisis is only encouraging even more death and horror in the Channel. Tonight, I ask, does the government care? Does Sir Keir Starmer care? Is anyone listening? The country needs answers. Let's cross live now to GBNews Home and Security Editor Mark White, who's been keeping tabs on today's grim milestone. Mark, this is a rather chilling development, I guess, since Labour took over. They promised to smash the gangs. They scrapped Rwanda. There's been nothing to replace it. And now, today, we hit 5,500 and 19,000 for the year. What's going on with our country, Mark?
Yes, sadly, it's not an unexpected development. If anything, actually, there are probably a slightly fewer coming across than we would have expected now that we're in the height of summer. But there have been some days where it's been a bit windy in the Channel, including this week. So I was in Dover earlier in the week on the cliff top there reporting on another milestone that 5,000 migrants had crossed the Channel illegally since Labour came to power. And then we had 2 or 3 days of windy weather, and it's only now, this weekend, that things have calmed down enough to allow more boats to come. And sure enough, we had just after 11 o'clock this morning, the Border Force vessel Ranger coming in with 50-odd migrants. It returned again with another 40 migrants. Then the Border Force vessel Defender was in as well with 135 migrants on board. And so it continued throughout the day, with our producer down in Dover estimating that at least 9 small boats came into UK waters carrying more than 450 people, taking the total for the year to now more than 19,000, and of course that milestone as well to 5,500 since Labour came to power, promising to smash the gangs. They scrapped the Rwanda deal on the first day in office. It was, according to Sir Keir Starmer, a gimmick. Instead, what he wants to do is go after the people smugglers. But that's going to take some time. They haven't even managed to appoint a new senior officer in charge of this new border security command, and that's over 6 weeks since Labour came to power. So they've got some way to go to achieve this goal of supposedly smashing the gangs. And while they don't do that, then all of the time when the weather improves, we'll get boat after boatload coming to the UK.
Mark, is this a national security risk? How does it present itself when it comes to the safety of our country and the great British public?
It's undoubtedly a national security risk. Security sources have told me in the past that they are very concerned that individuals with extremist links have undoubtedly crossed the English Channel. Some they know about, others that they don't know about. And of course, add to that the process of throwing identity documents into the English Channel, as they're told to do by the people smuggling gangs. It makes identifying those individuals that much more difficult. And then just add the security concerns around the general tension that it's bringing to the nation. Now, the government, those in authority, don't like to talk about this in the wake of the riots that we've seen. But there is a correlation, there is a tension in communities right across the country by mass migration, but in particular by the illegal immigration across the Channel, by those then claiming asylum and being housed in hundreds of hotels right across the country. There is barely a community in the country that hasn't seen a local hotel requisitioned by the Home Office for use by migrants. And that brings with it tensions. And until that's properly addressed, those tensions are not going to be alleviated.
Yeah, of course. And Angela Rayner, as I mentioned, saying that every borough in the UK will be taking their fair share of migrants, whether they like it or not. Just briefly and finally, Mark, I'm not sure if you know the answer to this question, but do you have any idea on the demographics or the profile of the 400-odd people who arrived today?
I can almost certainly tell you that at least 85% of them will be young males, because that is the pattern we've had since 2018, since this crisis began. In terms of countries, well, they're from Iran and Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan, increasingly some from Vietnam and China. But those main countries that I listed before, those countries where it's deemed too dangerous to actually return these people to, is where most come from.
OK, Mark White, our Home and Security editor, thank you very much for that rather chilling update. Thank you. Let's get the thoughts now of my panel tonight. Writer and broadcaster Nina Miskoff, former newspaper editor Neil Wallace, and the journalist and broadcaster Aidan McGee. Good evening to you all. Bear with me whilst I jog myself over here. Nina, let's start with you. It feels to me like, well, it's a fact actually, GBNews is the only mainstream broadcaster or media entity that seems to be following this national crisis so intently. We have someone down in Dover day in, day out, monitoring the crossings, counting how many people are there. Why does it feel like nobody else cares about this?
Everybody cares about the situation. Everybody cares about it. But some people aren't doing it in such an inflammatory manner. Not everyone who comes to our shores is an economic migrant or a terrorist. Many of them are refugees because...
Hang on a minute. Are you saying anything I said then was inflammatory?
I think that the fact that you keep hyping it up, that these people could be dangerous, that makes it seems like we're being flooded with people who are going to be of a danger to people in this country. The fact of the matter, you said the 500 people arrived today. That doesn't surprise me in the least. The weather's fabulous. If you'd said to me in the middle of winter that it was, where there's storms and snow falling, that there were 500, then I'd think that... Well,
does that make it OK then, just because the sun's out?
No, it doesn't make it... No, everybody understands this is a big problem. It's not just a big national problem, it's a big international problem and should be treated as such. But you cannot berate Keir Starmer 6 weeks down the track when he's been very busy for not having done anything.
Sorry.
You cannot
Nina.
Berate him. The thing is, you cannot just suddenly set up an entire system.
He rebranded this existing unit of the Border Force Command and put some bows and whistles on it, and then he's not even hired a boss for it.
Presumably they want to get... Listen, let me just, before we go any further, I don't vote Labour. I didn't vote Labour. So, although I'm thrilled that the Tories are out and Keir Starmer, a grown-up, is in, I am not an apologist for Keir Starmer.
Did you say the grown-ups are in?
I absolutely do say that. Well, I think you would call Keir Starmer a grown-up. He's boring enough to be a grown-up. So, why not?
Yeah, OK. Neil, what do you make of this? And Nina's saying that it's not right to suggest that any of these people could be a potential risk to the public safety.
I'm not saying any of these people. I'm saying you're implying that all of them are.
No, I didn't.
You implied that a great majority of them. You were saying they're all...
Look, let's just be a bit realistic about that. That guy, Mark White, is a brilliant reporter. I've known him for years. I've followed him for years.
Yeah.
One of the vital things he said in that broadcast is 85% of those who are landed today, as there were yesterday and the day before, were young men. They are not fleeing families. They are not people with a long history of persecution. Many of them will come from countries that have nothing to do with Great Britain. Now, we have historic ties with all variety of countries around the world. Most of these migrants are not, these illegal migrants are not from this country. And what we're not missing here, it's so easy to say you're being inflammatory. The problem is that those people who are absolutely wrong to riot, absolutely, it's quite right that they get sent to jail for 5-6 years. Totally agree with all of that. But you know what? Nobody's listening to them. Keir Starmer made all this fuss about this. It was one of his 5 big pledges. My big border unit. I'm going to have it ready to go. Bang. But Nina.
He's had 6 weeks and he's...
No, but that's nonsense. With respect,
Nina. Nonsense. You
with respect, Nina, can I just finish?
Fully formed. Go ahead.
The point is, he has had an open track to government for months. So the woman, Sue Gray, who is his right-hand man, as it were, right, he's had in place for almost a year. So if this is one of your big things, what you do is you put these people in place, you line them up ready to come. And he's not done it because all Keir Starmer ever does is talk for headlines, and he doesn't do anything.
He knows it's a problem. Everybody knows it's a problem.
Apart from give pay rises.
This is a side problem anyway. 5,000 doesn't touch the sides. I mean, you're talking of net migration now of 685,000 people. Now, most of them will end up not working, and I'll give you an example. I actually have direct contact. Yeah, I think two-thirds will end up not working. We don't know what they're going to be doing.
That's
also,
legal migration.
Legal migration is what I'm talking about. Yeah. Also, look, I rent a lot of these people, right?
By the Tory government.
I'll give you. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. The students come to me, they bring their families over. I'll give you one example. I've got one guy who rents off me. He's claiming universal credit of £435 a month because he can't afford through his delivery job to pay his wages. So yes, okay, these big multinational companies are getting away with paying their staff a pittance, but it's the state who are paying me to house them.
Aidan, am I being inflammatory by suggesting some of these people, 85%, as Mark White alluded to, of fighting age males, young, fit, strapping men coming to Britain? Am I being inflammatory? I
don't think you're being.
By the way, let me make clear, but Nina, before you chime in, throwing their passports in the water, throwing their mobile phones in the water, not knowing who they are.
I understand all of that, but saying that you're implying that 85% are potential terrorists. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
No,
young, strapping men.
He's
you're
not saying
implying that.
He's not saying that. What he is saying is we don't know what they are.
Well, exactly.
Now, I'm quite happy for people to enter this country if I say I check them out. I look at them, I think, yeah, I want them into my house. But what the problem is they are coming here pretending to be one thing and being something else. Now, actually, Aidan touched on something very, very important here. Legal migration, which incidentally the Tory government did a huge clampdown on in the last year. But
they set it up themselves.
They did set it up.
They did. It was Boris Johnson who encouraged the students.
Yeah, he also, Neil.
Actually, the real guy was a guy called Tony Blair, who, if you remember, threw open all the borders of the EU.
He also made it.
Said only 12,000 people would come to the country.
It's the same crisis, but slightly two different strands of it. Legal migration, everybody's cocked up over the past, since Tony Blair. It was tens of thousands, negative sometimes pre-Blair, and now it's the hundreds of thousands. It's a joke. But my issue tonight is these hundreds, daily almost, of undocumented men coming to Britain. It's a security risk. And Nina, I just don't understand how you can't be a little bit concerned that we don't know who they are or where they're going.
Of course I am concerned. Everybody is concerned, but you cannot talk about these people because you're othering them. You're making them...
How would you like us to describe them?
You can call them migrants. You can talk them.
Because they're not migrants. They're illegal migrants.
Well, they are. They
are here illegally.
And I don't think you're being inflammatory.
People are legal in the international law. They are legally allowed to travel through safe countries to the country they want to go to. To go to the country they want to go to. Now, look. In 2019, how many people came across in boats? Do you know that?
In 19, probably not as many. Yeah.
Under 2,000, 1,850. So this has all happened on the Conservative watch And since Brexit...
You keep trying to blame the Tories. I have no love for the Tories. You're saying it as if it's some dig at me. I don't care about the Tories.
Since Brexit, because you have to be able to return people. We need a system where people can be processed in other countries, processed in their own country,
Rwanda,
processed in
perhaps.
France. Oh, Rwanda was indeed a gimmick. It was an absolute joke.
Well,
and it's cost us
20 seconds, Stephen, 20
Well, the other countries, the EU itself is now exploring that with African countries. Italy in particular is forging the way, trying to find safe third countries. They're simply following a way to deal with an intractable problem.
I don't think you're being inflammatory, Ben, but also you cannot expect any Prime Minister, whether he has the will or not, to do anything in 6 weeks. It's just not realistic.
OK, good stuff. Thank you, panel. We'll be back shortly. The Home Office have said tonight the new government is taking steps to boost our border security, setting up a new Border Security Command, which will bring together our intelligence and enforcement agencies, equipped with new counter-terror-style powers and hundreds of personnel stationed in the UK and overseas to smash the criminal gangs, making millions in profit.